Hey, what's going on, everyone? Thank you for coming to watch. So we've got, guys, an update on a major severe weather threat that we have brewing here for the central and eastern United States. We also have a very strong storm system that is expected to bring many problems across the United States. I've got all the details coming right up. All right, so thank you for joining me here on this Sunday night. We have a lot to go over in this video as we're going to go over everything you guys can expect for what we're going to see in terms of impacts from our major storm system that is going to be crossing the country here over the next couple of days as we go into the later part of this week. Obviously, we're just opening the week here as we get into Sunday and into Monday, but really once we get into Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, that's eventually next week. That's when we're really going to start to have to worry and talk about the storm system. So we're going to start out here by taking a look at your current radar. You can see we have two things going on. Number one, you can see that we do still have some precipitation that is currently falling out here into portions of the Pacific Northwest, especially along the coastline there, up into portions of Washington and Oregon coastline there, mainly over towards the Seattle area. All right, that's where we will see likely some light rainfall, maybe even some snowfall mixing in there for those upper elevations. We do have a winter weather advisory in effect for some of these areas. So plan on slick travel if you are on those upper elevations, but really nothing too much other than a couple inches of snow at best. And then the next thing we do have to talk about here is we do have some strong to severe thunderstorms down here into the southeast. Obviously, we still do have quite a bit of moisture as our low pressure system exits the region. We have been seeing a lot of on and off severe thunderstorms today. We did actually have a brief tornado, I believe, earlier today in the Florida Panhandle here, and we still do have some severe storms. So get ready if you're in Jacksonville or anyone in northern Florida, Panama City. You guys are definitely going to be in for quite the ride tonight. So pretty active stuff going on in North Florida and the rest of the southeast today. But otherwise, country looks pretty good as we wrap up our weekend and we enter a new work week. All right. So we're going to move on here to our alerts. You can see we don't have much going on, but we do have winter storm watches up for portions of California, getting ready for our next storm system to move through from the Pacific Ocean. You can also see we do have we have high wind warnings out here into portions of North Dakota into Montana there. We also do have some high wind watches, so big time wind events starting to look like it's going to take shape out here. So we definitely have some precautionary watches and warnings out here. We also have some wind advisories up here in the northwestern counties of Montana. So please be sure to secure unsecured objects outside. Obviously, outdoor furniture and whatever. You really need to make sure that those are kind of latched down in this kind of wind, because trampolines. I mean, the high profile stuff and whatever has a lot of surface area, that big stuff is going to get tossed around out in that wind. So make sure you have all that latched down. All right. You can see we have red flag warnings up for portions of Nebraska down into northeastern Kansas, northwestern Missouri, sections of southern Iowa, into portions of northeastern Colorado here. So we are talking about, once again, very dry and windy conditions, and that's kind of coming together to create quite the hazardous kind of fire danger threat for these areas here in this environment. So we really need to make sure that no one messes with anything flammable. And I will say, over the past couple of days, we've had a fire threat out here in southern New England. Yesterday, we did actually see a pretty large wildfire and brush fire ignite out here in eastern Long Island, where I live. I'm in Western Long Island, but on the east end of the island, we did see some pretty big wildfires out there. So it is pretty much contained at this point, but it did burn quite a bit of an area out here towards the Hamptons. So pretty wild stuff going on there. But that kind of just shows you how easy it is for these wildfires to spread. We didn't even have nearly as a hazardous environment as what we were talking about out here in the northern United States. But you also do have some flood watches down here into the Florida Panhandle and the southern counties of Georgia there for those severe thunderstorms that are moving through. So once again, make sure that you're just staying indoors during the remainder of tonight, as we are expecting those kind of busy thunderstorms to move through. But things should start to kind of clear out as we get to the morning hours of tomorrow. All right. So we're gonna move on here to the GEFS. This is the GFS ensemble. So we take all the operational runs and we kind of put them together here, and we create kind of one just ensemble run here with just all the 51 members here of the GFS, I believe. Right. So basically what we're going to take away from this is we're going to look at how strong our low pressure system is expected to be and projected to be from the all the GFS ensemble members here, and we're also going to take away just how strong it's exactly going to be. So as we get into Thursday of this week, as we get into the later part of this week, you can see our low pressure system is now advancing onshore here, so it's basically moved its way into the Pacific Northwest, now into the mountain northwest. And you can see it is rapidly deepening as it does interact with some of this rocky mountain kind of cold air here. We are starting to see a lot of dry air and cold air start to get pushed down into, around the backside of the storm, and we will eventually start to see some warm and moist air start to rise up from the Gulf of Mexico. So things are starting to come together for this to be a strong storm system. Now, the reason why we're so concerned about this is because look how strong it is already. This is already down to a 986 millibar low pressure system by the time it's getting into the mountainous regions of the western United States. You can see all ensemble members showing a low pressure system have this staying below 990 millibars. So this is a very strong storm system considering that we're in March. And look what happens as the thing continues to just absolutely explode. We get to hour 126. This is getting into Friday evening. Look how strong that low pressure system is. This is down to 974 millibars. This is likely the equivalent to a Category 1 to Category 2 hurricane, but this is just a surface low that is kind of evolved from our trough that's moving through. So this is a pretty wild scenario that we have here from the GFS. But the thing is that the models have been so consistent on this is that we need to really be worried about this. But you can see that a lot of the members have this staying in the range of the low 70s, the low 970s, and even a couple of them, you can see several have this low pressure system getting down into the 960s, which I think is absolutely wild here. But very, very strong storm signal here. I mean, this thing has been, over the past couple of weeks, the GFS has been screaming at a huge signal for a major upcoming storm system. This would really shatter, pressure records. I mean, this is record low pressure that we're seeing here, which basically just means that this is a very, very strong and strengthening, healthy storm system here. The surface low that has officially kind of begun to move through the central United States. But even one member going crazy here, dropping this down to a 958 millibar low pressure system, which is just astronomical. I mean, that is just absolutely unbelievable to see that there. But that's equivalent to a Category 2 hurricane. So that's the insane part about this, is just how strong this is, because this is obviously very uncommon to see. But the low pressure system continues to move through the eastern United States. All right, it does bring with it likely a lot of cold air coming down from the Pacific Northwest, but this will likely kind of get trapped into the western half of the United States, as we will likely see warm air continue to kind of resurge up here into the eastern United States, following up with that storm system. So a lot is going to come into play here with forecasting this event. This is going to be one of those kind of hard to forecast events here. The uncertainty level is very, very high as far as the expectations for what exact impacts this is going to bring, but that moves its way on out. I mean, that is a very strong storm system, and you could say that this is definitely going to undergo, bombogenesis. This could definitely become a bomb cyclone just because of how rapid that pressure drop is as that interacts with the cold air from the Rocky Mountains. And all that, warm air surging up from the Gulf of Mexico. But this is going to have the right environment to do that kind of stuff. And I'm afraid that this is going to be a scenario that's going to happen, because we can even switch this over to the European model. This is the European ensemble run. And you're probably thinking, well, why are we looking at the GFS if it's the GFS, being so crazy here, showing another fantasy run? Well, look at the European model. The European model also does have a very strong low pressure system, also getting down into the 970s, and the rest of its ensembles, the rest of its members, do also show they're in line of a low pressure system getting down to the lower 970s and even into the 960s. So very, very concerning trends there from both models, the European and GFS ensembles. And so we move on here to kind of our mid latitude, or kind of our mid-level winds here. So this is going to be our wind pattern up into the 500 millibar zone, so kind of about a couple 10,000 feet in the air. This is what the wind pattern is going to be looking like. So what we're looking at, what we're looking for here is kind of a trough, and we're looking for that negatively tilted trough. And here it comes. It's coming into the region here. This is where we are expecting the strongest winds aloft here. I mean, look at this trough. This is, I mean, you're seeing a very amplified trough, very strong trough, producing winds of up to 125 knots. A couple 10,000 feet above the surface. So those mid-level winds are going to be ripping out here, and this is going to likely lead to a lot of wind shear. So kinematics are definitely going to be on the stronger side with this event, but that's a very strong 500 millibar jet stream there. So mid-level winds are going to be very strong, which means this is going to be an amplified trough. So very, very dynamic setup that we have here, but this continues to move into the Great Lakes region, and this could, get even stronger as this kind of moves over the waters there. But this gets, I mean, the trough is getting, over 120 knots, so very, very strong mid-level winds there. And at this point, this thing is a full-blown negatively tilted trough. I mean, this thing is insane. It's going off the map here. We're looking at the entire Ohio Valley, Southeast, and the Great Plains here, and you can see, I mean, this is the whole southern part of our trough, which I think is just crazy that it's, this large here. But there's a lot coming into play with a trough this strong and a trough this large, and you also got a huge surface law obviously to deal with, but then the backside of that thing kind of sweeps on through, and then you go back to more of a zonal flow. So a lot going on with that. Once again, very, very strong mid-level winds here of possibly up to 130 knots, which I think is pretty wild stuff. But this is the European model, so things are going to change. But as of right now, the GFS is in agreement on likely, a very strong trough. So right now things are starting to look pretty concerning, as obviously you're going to have the very strong winds aloft overlapping where we're going to see that surface low kind of move through. So speaking of the surface low, we look at the European model. This is for your kind of precipitation side of things. So this is as we end Friday night into Saturday, which should be the 14th to the 15th. There's that trough or the surface low moving through, already down to 975 millibars, and boom, it takes on that that negative tilt. And you can see that little comma shaped here. All right, this is what we look for a sign of a negatively tilted trough, which basically just means that the storm is starting to kind of strengthen. That's really what we look for in a strengthening trough. Positively tilted troughs are generally not as favorable for producing these big time surface lows. But you can see that this low pressure system continues to track through the central and eastern United States, and it is producing pretty heavy snow and wintry precipitation on the backside and on the northwestern portion of this event. So we will likely have to talk about that later in the video. We'll go more in depth, but you can see a lot of that cold, dry air coming down from the northwestern United States, and then a lot of warm, moist air coming up from the Gulf of Mexico and the Gulf of America, I should say. And so this is your classic bang bang, loaded gun severe weather setup. I have to say it right now. I mean, there's really nothing that at this moment seems, like it's going to stop this event. I'm saying it right now. And I know this is 6 days out. So I don't want you guys to go right down to the comment section and say, absolutely flame me and say, what are you talking about? This is a loaded gun setup already. Well, I think that as of right now, I mean, even though it's 6 days out, we have a really, really broad slight risk from the Storm Prediction Center on both day 6 and day 7. Most parameters are very, very high. And I mean, this surface low is, I mean, this could honestly break, could break pressure records, in some of these areas. So there's a lot going on with the storm system, but I will say a lot is left to change. A lot will change, so we still need to talk about that over the next couple of days. All right, so this is as we get into Friday. It looks like we will start to see a lot of convection pop up here late Friday night. This is about 8 p.m. here, 8, 9, 10 p.m. Those late, overnight hours of Friday. We start to see what looks like some possible thunderstorm buildup here across sections of eastern Oklahoma into portions of Missouri and into Arkansas, and then these thunderstorms do eventually sweep off to the east into the overnight hours, and we do wake up on Saturday morning to more thunderstorms here across portions of the southeastern United States, we do get more of a linear mode potentially out here into the southeast. Now, there's so much that we still need to figure out as those high res models will come in as we get closer to this event. But it does look like we'll get at least 2 rounds of severe thunderstorms if we do get, more of that intense severe weather event that we're looking for. But this looks to me like a pretty I'm saying it right now. This looks like a pretty solid outbreak of supercell thunderstorms, and I'm not gonna say this is gonna be a severe weather outbreak right now because things are gonna change. But as of right now, I mean, this looks to me like a pretty good signal for supercell thunderstorms to develop out there. And then as that low pressure system continues to deepen now into the 970s, there right around 970 millibars, we see a lot of cold air and very strong winds wrap around the backside, which just present the threat for a blizzard across what looks to be portions of the Dakotas into Minnesota, and then that thing continues to move on out with possibly another squall line event kind of sweeping through the mid-Atlantic there and the Northeast. So very, very busy storm system. That thing is going to be very, very strong. That is a monstrous low pressure system. So again, about 150 hours out with this. So still, got a little time to change. But I'm saying it right now, there will be a strong storm system. Now, it may not be exactly, 970 millibars, but it's going to be strong, whatever it's going to be. And we're going to have to talk about it over the next couple of days. All right. So before we do get into our severe weather breakdown, I do want to quickly go to the Storm Prediction Center. I forgot to put this up and set this up in before I record this video. But before we break down the severe weather event, we need to take a look at our Storm Prediction Center outlook here. So they did introduce today a very, very broad slight risk, which is a 15% risk for severe weather out here. This is for day 6. So this is for Friday. We have a 15% risk extending all the way from southeastern Iowa down through Illinois into portions of Missouri, eastern Kentucky, far eastern Tennessee, all of Arkansas, far eastern Oklahoma, eastern Texas, portions of northern Louisiana, western Mississippi, and once again, western Tennessee there. So that is a very, very broad area. This is, I will say, I have seen a lot of people comparing this event to the notorious March 31st, 2023 severe weather outbreak, where we did have a double high risk. Now, I'm not saying that this is going to be a double high risk, but this is a very similar area to what we did see for that event. And even on their day 6 outlook, when they did see a day 6 slight risk, it was for a pretty similar area here. So the really concerning part about this is that it's just such a broad area, but that's a slight risk for all of these areas. So if this were to be issued on day 3, this whole area would be a slight risk. And so another thing that they do mention in the Storm Prediction Center is that they do say that given uncertainties still exist regarding timing and location of key features, as well as the northward extent of deeper moisture return, this area is likely to change/shift over the coming days as details come better resolved, and higher probabilities will likely become necessary as well. So basically what they're saying there is that as we get more and more info to come in, because obviously this is still pretty far out and there's still a lot that can change, as that new info comes in, this will likely need to be upgraded. So that means that they're basically saying that this eventually downstream will likely be upgraded to a enhanced 30% chance for severe weather. So yes, that could happen on day 3 or even just as late as day 2, but they're saying that it likely will be needed. So let me move over to day 7. This is going to be the remnants of that event. We have another 15% risk, not as big, but it is extending from southern Tennessee down into portions of Alabama, western Georgia, and a little bit of southeastern Louisiana and eastern Mississippi there. So that's another pretty broad area with a population of 15 million people, also under a slight risk for severe weather. So we'll have to talk about this as well for a possible tornado threat. And I think that all hazards are going to be on the table as of right now, just based off of what we're looking at from soundings and all the parameters that we have as of right now on the long-range models. So let's get into breaking down the severe weather threat. So we're going to start out with thermodynamics. We're going to take a look at our dew points. This is basically showing us how humid and how moist the air is. So we're looking for that big moisture pull that's going to be kind of pulled into the center of circulation into the system. And you can see already by Tuesday, we're starting to see those dew points slowly creep farther north. We're seeing widespread 40 to 50 degree dew points spread the region out here into the southeast and Ohio Valley. But really, the big event starts to come into Wednesday, where we already do have lower 60-degree dew points creeping up into the plains and the into Dixie Alley. And really, as we get into Thursday, once that low pressure system really starts to fire across the Great Plains, that's when dew points start to really rise here. And this is once we get into Friday, so this is when our event starts to kick off. Notice how high these dew points are very far north. I mean, this is still conducive for thunderstorm development, even though you only have dew points up here into the 50s. You may think, well, that's not really too concerning considering that, we're talking about a potential severe weather outbreak. Well, just because we have dew points in the 50s does not mean that we're going to see a huge bust. You got to keep in mind, the Storm Prediction Center still has these areas in the slight risk. And they did mention that the exact location, the exact northern extent of this moisture return is going to really determine how intense the severe weather event is going to be. So really, we need to just keep an eye on how far north these dew points get. But even though these dew points are in the upper 50s, considering that these are going to be overlapping, those winds aloft, the 500 millibar jet stream winds of 120 knots plus, I mean, that's still a very favorable environment for severe weather. So that's the concerning part. But if you look down here into the southeast, you can see likely dew points in the lower 60s and into the mid 60s. And then I know it's cut off the map, but even down here in Louisiana and the Gulf Coast there to Dixie Alley, we could be talking about dew points as high as near the upper 60s, maybe even lower 70s. So right now, it does look like a very, very favorable setup for severe thunderstorms, and this continues as we get into Saturday here. As that low pressure system continues to lift north, that will likely cause these dew points in that warm sector to continue to build northward. So that's why it's looking like this is going to be the more favorable setup rather than what we saw a couple days ago. So I don't know if you guys remember, but it started out with a day 6 enhanced risk, and everyone was like, wow, this is going to be a very, very significant event, likely a severe weather outbreak, and we didn't even end up seeing a moderate risk, and that's because the low pressure system moved too far south, and the moisture return was not able to make it far enough north. And so that's why we didn't see a huge regional severe weather outbreak. But as we get into Saturday, you can see dew points remain in the 60s here across portions of the Ohio and Tennessee Valley into Dixie Alley. The Gulf Coast states stay very, very moist, very, very warm. And then really all these high dew points really spread into the eastern United States while remaining very, very high down to the upper 60s and low 70s down there into the deep south and in Dixie Alley. And then all of that dry air and cold air moves in from the backside. So rather impressive dew points there, considering that this is going to be overlapping our strong 500 millibar jet stream winds. And so now we look at our bulk shear, which is basically just going to this is basically going to show us what our wind shear is looking like. So obviously our change in direction with those wind patterns basically. All right, so this is going to be measuring what our wind shear is going to be looking like from the surface to 500 millibars. So basically, the surface to about the mid levels of the atmosphere. And you can see as we get into really into Friday and Saturday, there comes that trough. Right, these are not the winds aloft; these are the winds closer to the surface. This is essentially how strong your low level jet is, which is essential for storms to start spinning and storms to be discrete and storms to produce tornadoes. You can see that our bulk shear does start to increase rapidly across portions of Missouri into Arkansas, where the front end of that trough begins to dig through. You can see, I mean, if you were to see this on a severe weather event, only one day out, if this were overlapping dew points in the 60s, you would have a serious severe weather outbreak on your hands, because this is showing wind shear into the 110 to 120 knots zone, which is considered very, very strong, and it overspreads this area where we see at least 90 plus knots of shear. Anywhere in the red is really 80 plus knots of shear, but that's a pretty large area, large swath of a very high and very strong shear. And then this continues to move off to the east while still maintaining that very, very strong kind of nature there as that trough continues to move through. And then like we saw earlier on the mid-level wind speeds here, that trough is going to be so big that it's cut off the map, and we only get to see the southern part of that trough as we get into Friday and Saturday. And then finally by Sunday, as your weekend wraps up, the back end of that trough moves through. So there's going to be a lot of different moving pieces with this event, and one of the things that's going to be very important to mention as we forecast this upcoming severe weather event is just how strong that shear is going to be. Essentially, how strong the lower level jet is going to be, because that's obviously essential for talking about rotation within thunderstorms and obviously tornado genesis. So a lot's going to be going on with that. All right, then the next thing we're going to look at is CAPE here, which is another way of saying basically thunderstorm juice, or the instability that we have in the atmosphere. So this is basically going to show us where we're going to see the most conducive areas for convection here and for thunderstorm development. You can see as we get into Friday and into Saturday, we do see CAPE levels increase pretty rapidly all the way up into the Midwest. I mean, this is a lower Midwest. This is where your low pressure center is tracking. If we do get storms to fire across this region up here in this far north in the Midwest, remember, we've looked at your lower level jet with your bulk shear and also your dew points. If you have low 60s, upper 50-degree dew points, and you have very very strong shear in this region, if that all overlaps with 1,500 joules per kilograms of CAPE, you're going to have a pretty favorable environment for severe weather in the lower Midwest. So that's why the SPC continues to build that slight risk farther north, because there's still going to be a decently favorable environment for severe weather out here. And then even all the way down to the deep south, we start to see a little bit more of those higher CAPE levels with more instability starting to build in there. I know that does get up to about 2,000 joules per kilograms. And this is as we get into Saturday. There's that next round of severe weather. Look how high these CAPE levels get. These get very close to 3,000 joules per kilograms. So we can actually take a look at a sounding here, which is basically just going to measure what's what the environment ahead of these storms is looking like according to the model. All right, so with this sounding here, we start out with your hodograph. You can see your hodograph is very elongated there, so obviously that's a sign of possible rotation within the thunderstorm, and that could be developing a low base, and could develop rotation later on. You can see a possible hazard type being a PDS tornado, so this is the most intense possible hazard type you can get on a sounding here, so that means that this is a pretty solid sounding that we're seeing here. Effective layer STP, which is another way of saying basically the significant tornado parameter. It does show up as about a 6.5, closer to a 7 there. So very, very high. But look at the surface-based CAPE here. 3,430 joules per kilogram. So very, very high surface-based CAPE. That's a 29.8 supercell composite parameter there, and then you can see still that fixed layer STP at about a 6.1, and then overall just a very very impressive sounding there. Storm Slinky turns 74 degrees with that northeast storm motion. So basically all we're saying here is that most of these parameters are on the very very high end of the scale, and we are starting to see signs of environment being conducive for rotating thunderstorms, and thunderstorms will start developing low bases here. So there's a lot coming into play as we look at these soundings. There's a lot that we're going to have to kind of find out as we get those more short range but high res models to come out, where they are typically better at forecasting for these events when we look at soundings. But if you look here, this is also very concerning, because this hatched line here, this is where your instability is. Your instability levels, the farther away they are from your red and green line, which is your temperature dew points, the higher the instability levels will be. So you can see your at the surface, your temperature is 84 degrees with a dew point of 71 degrees. Now, we consider dew points higher than 60 degrees to be generally favorable for severe weather. When you have a dew point of 71 degrees with a temperature of 84 degrees, which overlaps very strong shear, you have a very elongated hodograph. A lot of what you're seeing here, a lot of what I'm seeing is screaming textbook supercell. So there is a lot to talk about here with this sounding, and that's just why this is very, very concerning. But we'll look at another one if we can get, even more concerning sounding here. So really the same thing on this sounding here, even closer to a 7 on your effective layer STP. So very favorable environment we just took from Louisiana. So that's really where those highest CAPE levels really kind of rise there. So basically the region where we took that from, this is Saturday evening in southeastern Louisiana, southwestern Mississippi, an area that not too long ago did see severe weather. We see very, very high CAPE levels, and obviously that sounding really did show a very favorable environment for severe weather. So that's just going to give us a signal that Louisiana and this general region here may be an area that we need to really focus in on over the next couple of days if that forecast really holds. So a lot going on over down there. And then finally, we will take a look at your PWAT anomaly. So this is basically shows us this is into the lower levels of the atmosphere how moist the air is. So I just want to show you guys this for 1 second. This shows you how big your moisture pool is. So your moisture return basically means that the storm system is bringing all of this warm and moist air up from the Gulf of Mexico, wrapping around into itself here, and that causes it to take on this negative tilt, which means it's going to strengthen, and that's where you get that 972 millibar low pressure system from. And if you're wondering why are we seeing these very high dew points in March because it's so early, well, you're seeing a huge warm sector build because you have all this warm air being pulled in and wrapped into the center of circulation of that low pressure system. So that's where you're getting all of this warm air from that's moving so far north because that low pressure system is tracking so far north and it's strong enough to pull all that warm air in all the way down from the Gulf of Mexico. Another thing to talk about is that you're going to have very, very dry and cold air aloft, which basically is going to likely result in very windy and dry conditions on the backside of the storm system. So if we do see very dry conditions, obviously we're going to see the windy conditions. So on the backside, I think we will have to talk about a very high fire threat for these areas because whenever you get dry and windy conditions, obviously that's where we get the very, very high fire danger from. So I think that the plains is going to be an area we're going to have to talk about for a concerning fire danger threat over the days really past that the peak timing for this event. Really, once that storm system moves out, the days after, the days following, I think are going to be something we're going to have to monitor for at least a significant fire danger threat as that storm system exits the eastern United States. Then finally, we take a look at the European model. Once again, we zoom in on the north central United States. I do want to talk about the potential for a blizzard up here in Winter Storm. We did mention this a little bit earlier, how the northern extent of that low pressure system will bring in a lot of that cold air. And we do see that as the storm system progresses into the upper Midwest here, you can see a lot of that freezing rains, heavy snow, and even sleet on the backside really starting to dump on these areas across portions of western Minnesota into portions of eastern North Dakota and eastern South Dakota here. If we do see this play out, I mean, you're going to get very, very windy conditions. So putting those things together, putting those parameters together, I mean, if you get heavy snow and windy conditions, you could have potentially blizzard conditions once again, which is a general area that did see a blizzard conditions just a couple days ago with our past storm system. So there will be the threat for a blizzard as we will see very strong wind wrap around the once again the center of that low pressure system because we will see warm air make it all the way this far north, which will wrap around on the backside, causing more moist air to kind of help out with the kind of just the formation of all this snowfall here. And so that's where you're getting all the precipitation from. And also that's just going to generate more and more windy conditions on the backside. So a lot going on with that as well. So that's all I got for you guys. Thank you all for tuning in. Appreciate you guys for watching this video. So a lot going on with this. This is going to be a multi-hazard day, multi-hazard threat. This is going to be likely a multi-day severe weather event. We're talking about a blizzard. We're talking about a severe weather event. We're talking about a very high fire danger threat. We have a lot going on across the country. This is going to cause major problems, and you are likely to be involved if you are living in the United States. So make sure you have notifications turned on, that you like this video, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on any future updates because we will be keeping you guys prepared and we will be keeping you guys informed. So that's going to wrap up the video. I appreciate all of you for coming to watch, and I'll see you guys in the next video.